Maria stood at the bus stop with a small cloth bag pressed against her chest. The wind was cold that morning, and her hands trembled slightly as she held onto the strap of the bag. Inside it were a few clothes, an old photograph of her daughter, and a piece of bread she had saved from the previous night. It wasn't much, but it was all she had left. For the past 3 months, life had turned into a struggle she never imagined facing. Maria had worked in a small factory in the city, packaging food boxes. It was not a dream job, but it helped her pay the rent and buy food for her 7-year-old daughter, Emily. They lived in a small rented room near the factory, and even though life was hard, Maria always managed to smile when she came home and saw Emily waiting with open arms. But everything changed the day the factory closed without warning. The owner disappeared overnight, leaving behind unpaid wages and hundreds of people without work. At first, Maria believed she would find another job soon. She walked through the streets every day, knocking on shop doors and asking if they needed help. Some people said they would call her back, but they never did. Others just shook their heads before she could even finish her sentence. Slowly, her little savings disappeared. She sold her few belongings to pay the rent and buy food, but even that wasn't enough. The landlord began to knock on her door, reminding her that rent was due. Every time she looked at Emily's innocent face, her heart broke a little more. One morning, when there was no food left, Maria made the hardest decision of her life. She wrapped her belongings in her old cloth bag and told Emily they were going to the countryside. She had heard from another woman that farms often needed workers, especially during harvest season. Maria didn't know anyone there, but she knew she had to try. Staying in the city meant hunger and despair, and she couldn't let that happen to her child. The bus ride was long and dusty. Through the window, Maria watched the tall buildings slowly disappear, replaced by endless green fields and small villages. Emily rested her head on her mother's lap, unaware of the heavy thoughts running through Maria's mind. "Everything will be fine," Maria whispered to herself again and again, trying to believe her own words. When they arrived, the small farming town looked peaceful. The air was clean, the sky bright, and people were busy in the fields. Maria took Emily's hand and started walking along the main road, stopping at every farmhouse they passed. She knocked politely, explained that she was looking for work, and promised to do anything: cleaning, cooking, planting, or caring for animals. Some people listened but said they already had workers. Others just looked at her worn clothes and turned away. Each rejection felt heavier than the last. By the time the sun started to set, Maria and Emily were exhausted. They hadn't eaten since morning. The little girl tried to be strong, but her small voice finally broke the silence. "Mama, I'm hungry." The words cut through Maria like a knife. She took the piece of bread from her bag, divided it into 2, and gave half to her daughter. "Eat this, sweetheart. We'll find something better tomorrow," she said, forcing a smile even as tears burned her eyes. They spent that night under a tree near the road. The stars above were bright, but Maria couldn't sleep. She kept thinking of her old life. The smell of warm food from the factory kitchen, Emily's laughter, and the comfort of their tiny room. Now everything felt so far away, but she also remembered her mother's words from long ago. "When life gets hard, don't sit and cry. Stand up and walk until you find your answer." So, as soon as the first light of dawn touched the sky, Maria stood up again, brushed the dust off her dress, and continued walking. The next morning, she reached another part of the village. Her clothes were wrinkled, her shoes covered in dust, but her determination remained strong. Emily walked beside her, quietly holding her mother's hand. As they passed each farm, Maria kept asking for work. "Please, I can help with anything. I just need a chance," she said to everyone she met. Most people gave her sympathetic looks but said no. Finally, around noon, she reached a large farmhouse at the end of the road. The land stretched wide with golden crops swaying in the wind. The house itself was old but strong, surrounded by fruit trees. Maria hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should knock. She felt weak and tired, but something inside her told her this could be her last hope. She took a deep breath and walked up to the wooden gate. An older man came out of the barn, wiping his hands on a cloth. His gray hair and wrinkled face showed years of hard work. Maria stepped forward and said in a soft voice, "Sir, my name is Maria. I've been looking for work since morning. Please, I'll do any kind of job. Cleaning, cooking, field work, anything. I just need work." Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke, but her eyes stayed firm. The man, whose name was Mr. Lewis, didn't reply right away. He looked at her carefully, her tired eyes, the child standing beside her, the worn-out shoes. He could see she wasn't lying. Most people who came asking for work didn't look so desperate yet so honest. For a moment he said nothing, just nodded slightly and told her to wait near the porch. Maria sat down on a wooden bench, clutching her bag tightly. She didn't know if he would come back with an answer or send her away. Emily leaned against her shoulder, half asleep from exhaustion. The silence of the farm was broken only by the sound of the wind and birds in the distance. Maria looked at the fields, imagining herself working there. Anything would be better than the emptiness she had known these past months. Minutes passed, and doubt began to creep into her mind again. Maybe he had changed his mind. Maybe he didn't trust strangers. Just as she was about to stand up and leave, the door opened. Mr. Lewis stepped out, holding a small tray with a plate of food and a glass of water. He placed it in front of her and said, "Eat first." For a moment, Maria couldn't speak. No one had shown her kindness in weeks. Her throat tightened as she whispered, "Thank you, sir." She divided the food, giving half to Emily, and ate slowly, each bite reminding her that hope still existed in the world. As she finished the meal, she looked up at the old farmer, who was quietly watching from the porch. She didn't know it yet, but that simple act of kindness was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that would test her strength, reward her honesty, and change her future in ways she could never imagine. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the fields, Maria sat with her daughter on the porch steps, a faint smile returning to her face for the first time in months. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time she felt a small spark of hope inside her heart, a belief that maybe, just maybe, life was giving her another chance. Maria sat quietly on the wooden bench outside the farmhouse, the plate now empty in her lap. The food had given her strength, but her heart was still filled with worry. She didn't know if Mr. Lewis would actually offer her work, or if he had only shown kindness out of pity. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them together, whispering a silent prayer. Emily leaned against her side, already asleep, her small face calm and peaceful. The child's trust gave Maria courage, but deep inside she feared what would happen if she was turned away again. After a few minutes, Mr. Lewis came out of the house, holding his hat in one hand. He was a tall, quiet man, and there was something serious yet gentle about his face. He looked at Maria and said, "You said you're willing to do any kind of work?" "Yes, sir," Maria replied quickly, standing up. "I can clean, cook, take care of animals, help in the fields. Anything you need. I just need a chance. I don't want charity. I only want work." Her words were soft but full of determination. Mr. Lewis noticed that she didn't sound like someone who was begging. She sounded like someone ready to fight for her life. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked toward the open fields where the crops swayed in the afternoon breeze. Then he turned back to her and said, "Come with me." Maria followed him cautiously. He walked slowly, leading her past the front yard toward the barn. Inside, the air smelled of hay and earth. Chickens clucked nearby, and a few cows were resting in their stalls. "I've managed this farm alone for a long time," he said quietly. "My wife used to take care of the household and workers, but after she passed away, things have been different." His voice grew heavy with memory. "Since then, I haven't hired anyone. Not many people treat work honestly anymore." Maria listened carefully, not interrupting. She could hear the sadness behind his calm tone. "I understand, sir," she said softly. "I'll do my best if you give me a chance." He stopped and turned to look at her. "Why did you come here? You don't look like someone from around this town." Maria took a deep breath. "I lost my job in the city," she said. "The factory closed and I had nowhere to go. My daughter hasn't eaten properly for days. I walked from one place to another, but everyone said no. This was the last house on the road, so I thought, maybe this time I'll be lucky." Mr. Lewis studied her for a moment, his eyes softening. There was truth in every word she spoke. He nodded slightly and said, "Wait here." Then he walked back toward the house. Maria stood silently, unsure what to expect. She looked at the animals, the fields, and the house that stood tall against the bright sky. Everything about the place felt peaceful. She imagined working there, waking up early to care for the animals and feeling useful again. For months she had felt invisible, but here, even standing quietly, she felt seen. Minutes passed and her heart pounded louder with every second. What if he decided she wasn't strong enough? What if he thought she couldn't handle the work? She closed her eyes and prayed again. Please, God, just one chance. That's all I need. The sound of footsteps broke her thoughts. Mr. Lewis was coming back, carrying a small key in his hand. Come, he said simply. He led her toward a small house beside the barn, an old worker's cottage that looked like it hadn't been used in years. The windows were dusty, and the door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside there was a small bed, a table, and a stove covered in cobwebs. It's not much, he said, but if you clean it up, you can stay here with your daughter. I'll pay you for helping on the farm and taking care of the animals. You'll have food and a roof over your head. For a moment, Maria didn't move. She thought she hadn't heard him right. You mean, you'll really let me work here? She asked softly. Mr. Lewis nodded. Yes, but on one condition, he said. You must treat this farm like it's your own. I don't need someone who only works for money. I need someone who cares. Tears filled Maria's eyes as she nodded again and again. I promise, sir. I'll take care of everything as if it's mine. You won't regret this. That evening, Maria spent hours cleaning the small house. She swept the floor, dusted the shelves, and washed the windows until they shined. Emily woke up and helped by folding the few clothes they had. For the first time in months, Maria felt a sense of peace. The cottage was small and simple, but to her it felt like a new beginning. Mr. Lewis came by later with a basket of food, bread, milk, and a few vegetables from the garden. You can start work tomorrow, he said. Rest tonight. You'll need your strength. Maria thanked him, her voice trembling with emotion. After he left, she sat by the window with Emily, sharing their meal. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Emily looked at her mother with sleepy eyes and said, Mama, do we live here now? Maria smiled and brushed her daughter's hair. Yes, my love, she whispered. This is our new home. As night fell, Maria lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't stop thinking about how her life had changed in a single day. That morning, she had been hungry, tired, and hopeless. Now she had food, shelter, and a job. But more than that, she had found kindness from a stranger. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Farm work was hard and demanding, but she didn't care. All she wanted was to prove herself and build a better life for Emily. The next morning, before sunrise, Maria woke up to the sound of roosters crowing. She stepped outside, feeling the cool air on her face. The field stretched endlessly before her, covered in a thin layer of mist. She could see Mr. Lewis already working near the barn, feeding the animals. Without wasting time, she tied her hair, rolled up her sleeves, and joined him. He looked at her in surprise. You're up early, he said. Maria smiled shyly. You said work starts early, sir. I wanted to be ready, he nodded approvingly. Good, let's start with the cows. I'll show you what to do. As the morning light spread across the land, Maria followed his instructions carefully. She listened, learned, and worked with all her heart. Every task, no matter how small, felt meaningful. Mr. Lewis watched quietly, realizing that the woman who had arrived the day before with tired eyes and torn shoes was now working like she had been born on the farm. When the sun finally rose high in the sky, Maria wiped the sweat from her forehead and smiled. Her body was tired, but her heart felt alive again. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't thinking about what she had lost. She was thinking about what she was building. That day, when she returned to the cottage, Emily ran to her with open arms. Mama, the farmer gave me an apple, the child said excitedly, holding up the bright red fruit. Maria hugged her tightly. See, I told you, sweetheart. Good days are coming. Outside, the field shimmered under the golden sun, and though Maria didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change both her and Mr. Lewis in ways they could never imagine. Maria's first few days on the farm passed in a whirlwind of new experiences. She woke up before sunrise, the cold morning air brushing against her face as she stepped outside the small cottage. The farm was quiet except for the soft clucking of chickens and the lowing of cows. She took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh, earthy smell of the soil and grass, and felt a strange mix of exhaustion and excitement. After months of struggling in the city, this work, though hard, made her feel alive. Mr. Lewis guided her through each task carefully. She learned how to feed the animals, clean their stalls, and check on their health. She learned how to collect eggs from the hens without breaking them, and how to water the crops evenly so the plants would thrive. Every day was long and tiring, but Maria worked with focus and dedication. Mr. Lewis often watched silently from a distance, noticing how she moved, how she treated the animals with gentle care, and how her attention never wavered. At first, Maria worried that she might not meet his expectations. She remembered the words he had said when he offered her the work. "Treat this farm like it's your own." She wanted to prove herself, not just to earn a living, but to earn trust. Each day she pushed herself to learn more and do better. She also wanted to make Emily proud, to show her daughter that no matter how hard life gets, honesty, effort, and kindness could open new doors. One afternoon, as the sun rose high in the sky, Maria was tending to the vegetable garden. She knelt in the soil, carefully weeding around the tomato plants when she noticed a row of lettuce that had begun to wilt. Without hesitation, she watered the plants thoroughly and rearranged the stakes to support them. She knew that every small detail mattered. When Mr. Lewis came by, he noticed the effort she had put in. "You've got a good touch with these plants," he said, nodding in approval. Maria's heart lifted at his words. Praise from someone as experienced as him meant more than she could describe. "Thank you, sir," she replied quietly, feeling proud. Work on the farm was not just physical labor. Maria also discovered the satisfaction of seeing results from her effort. In the early mornings, she collected fresh milk from the cows, and later she baked simple bread and biscuits for Emily and the few workers on the farm. The taste of bread she had baked herself, using ingredients from the farm, gave her a new sense of accomplishment. Slowly she began to feel a connection to the land and the animals, as if they were part of her family. Despite the hard work, life on the farm was not without challenges. There were days when the weather was harsh. Heavy rains soaked the fields, strong winds threatened the crops, and sometimes a sick animal required urgent care. Maria faced each obstacle with determination, learning from Mr. Lewis and using her intuition. He began to trust her judgment more, allowing her to make small decisions about the farm. It was a sign that he was seeing her not just as a worker, but as someone capable of responsibility. One morning, while Maria was cleaning the barn, Mr. Lewis approached her with a gentle smile. "I see you care for this place more than anyone I've ever hired," he said. Maria looked up, surprised. "I'm just trying my best, sir," she said. "I want to do right by you and by Emily." He nodded, his eyes softening. "It's more than that," he said. "You've brought life back here. I can feel it. The farm, it's brighter now." Maria's eyes welled up with tears. She had never imagined that her work could make such a difference. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I just want to help, that's all." As weeks passed, Maria's confidence grew. She learned how to repair small tools, how to plant seeds in a way that would ensure a strong harvest, and even how to prepare meals for everyone on the farm. She found joy in the little moments. Emily running through the fields with a basket of flowers, the chickens pecking happily in the morning sun, and the sound of Mr. Lewis humming quietly while working in the fields one day. While walking past the orchard, Maria noticed a small group of workers who had been absent for weeks. They were returning, curious about the woman who had taken such care of the farm. Mr. Lewis introduced her to them, explaining how Maria had helped restore the land and the animals. The workers, impressed by her dedication, began to take more care in their own work. Maria watched them, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. She realized that her effort was not only improving the farm but also inspiring others. Evenings were her favorite time. After the day's labor, she would sit on the porch with Emily, sharing simple meals and telling her stories about the farm. Sometimes Mr. Lewis would join them, sharing tales of his own youth and the history of the land. Maria felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. She no longer felt like an outsider or a beggar seeking help. She felt like part of a family, respected and valued. One particular evening, after a long day of planting new crops, Mr. Lewis called Maria aside. He handed her a small notebook. "I want you to keep records of everything you do," he said. "Planting, feeding, harvesting, everything. I want to see how you plan your work and take responsibility." Maria accepted the notebook eagerly. She spent hours writing down every task, every observation about the crops and animals. It gave her a new sense of purpose, a way to track her progress and show that her work mattered. Mr. Lewis checked the notes each week, often nodding in approval. "You're learning fast," he said one afternoon. "I've never had someone take this much care in so little time." Through it all, Maria never lost sight of why she had come to the farm in the first place. She wanted to build a future for Emily, to create a life where her daughter could feel safe and loved. The farm offered more than just work. It offered hope. And Maria knew that hope, once found, had to be nurtured carefully, like the crops she tended each day. Months went by, and the farm began to thrive again. The fields grew greener, the animals healthier, and the orchard fuller. Visitors who passed by the farm noticed the changes and praised Mr. Lewis for his well-kept land. But he knew the real credit belonged to Maria. She had brought energy, care, and a sense of life back to the place he had almost given up on. One evening, as the sun set in warm hues of orange and pink, Mr. Lewis walked with Maria toward the edge of the fields. He stopped and looked at her. "Maria," he said softly, "you've done more than I could have imagined. You've given this farm a second life." Maria shook her head, smiling through tears. "I only did what I had to do, sir. You gave me a chance when no one else would." He nodded, understanding her humility. Sometimes giving someone a chance is the best decision we ever make, and sometimes that person changes everything. Maria returned to the cottage that night with Emily, her heart full of gratitude. She had arrived at the farm desperate and exhausted, unsure of what the future held. Now she had work she could be proud of, a place to call home, and the knowledge that she was making a difference. The farm was no longer just Mr. Lewis's property. It had become a place where Maria could dream again, where Emily could laugh without worry, and where hope could grow alongside the crops. And as Maria drifted off to sleep that night, listening to the soft sounds of the animals and the wind through the trees, she realized something important. Sometimes, the kindness of a stranger and the courage to keep going can turn the darkest days into the beginning of something truly beautiful. Maria's days on the farm had become a rhythm she had never experienced before. She woke before dawn, when the sky was still dark and the stars sparkled faintly above the fields. The air was fresh and cool, carrying the earthy scent of soil and dew. She would stretch, tie her hair back, and gently wake Emily, who would yawn and rub her eyes before climbing out of the small bed in the workers' cottage. Maria had grown to love these mornings, quiet and peaceful, unlike the chaos of the city where she had spent so many sleepless nights. After a simple breakfast of bread, milk, and fresh fruit from the farm, Maria would head out into the fields. Some days she fed the animals first, cows, goats, chickens, learning each animal's personality and needs. Others she worked on the crops, tending to vegetables and grains with careful attention. Every task required patience and precision. Maria had learned that rushing or cutting corners could harm the crops or the animals, and she didn't want to fail this new life she was building. Mr. Lewis continued to observe her work, sometimes offering guidance and other times letting her figure things out on her own. He had begun to trust her completely, allowing her to make decisions about planting schedules, feeding routines, and even small repairs around the farm. Maria felt a deep sense of responsibility. This wasn't just a job. It was a place she cared for and a life she wanted to nurture for herself and Emily. One afternoon, while she was harvesting carrots with Emily beside her, Maria noticed that some of the older plants were not growing as well as the new ones. She knelt down and carefully examined the soil, realizing it needed extra nutrients. She went to the barn, gathered some compost, and began to mix it into the ground. Emily watched her mother with wide eyes. "Mama, you're making the carrots stronger," she exclaimed. Maria smiled, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Yes, darling. Every plant needs care, just like people." It wasn't long before Mr. Lewis noticed the changes. He walked through the garden one morning, seeing the healthy, vibrant plants and the well-tended soil. "Maria," he said with a hint of awe, "you've done a wonderful job here. The garden has never looked so good." Maria's cheeks warmed at the praise. She felt proud, not just because of the words, but because she could see the results of her dedication. Maria's connection with the farm grew deeper each day. She found joy in the simple things, the way the sun shone on the dew-covered grass, the laughter of Emily as she ran through the orchard, the sound of the chickens clucking happily in the yard. Life was hard, yes, but it was meaningful in a way Maria had never experienced in the city. She had learned that hard work could be rewarding, and kindness could come from unexpected places. One day, as Maria was feeding the goats, a few villagers came to visit the farm. They were curious about the woman who had arrived months ago, exhausted and hungry, and had somehow transformed the place. Mr. Lewis introduced Maria to them, explaining how she had cared for the land and animals with honesty and patience. The villagers nodded in admiration. Some even offered to help with tasks inspired by her dedication. Maria felt a quiet pride, realizing that her effort had not only improved the farm but had also influenced others around her. Evenings on the farm had a calm, comforting rhythm. Maria would finish her work, clean up, and prepare a simple dinner. She and Emily would sit together, sharing stories about their day. Sometimes Mr. Lewis would join them, speaking softly about the farm's history and memories of his late wife. Maria felt a growing bond with him, not just as her employer but as a mentor and a kind presence in her life. She had arrived with nothing, and yet here she found care, guidance, and respect. One particularly challenging week came when a heavy storm hit the village. Rain poured down for days, flooding parts of the fields and damaging some of the crops. Maria worked tirelessly to salvage what she could. She carried water away from low-lying areas, tied down young plants, and tended to frightened animals huddled in the barn. Emily tried to help, but Maria gently guided her to stay safe inside the cottage during the worst parts of the storm. By the time the skies cleared, the farm had survived with minimal damage thanks to Maria's quick thinking and relentless effort. Mr. Lewis stood in the middle of the field afterward, observing the results. "Maria," he said quietly, "you saved this farm from a terrible loss. You've done more than I could have asked for." Maria wiped the sweat from her brow, feeling both tired and fulfilled. "I only did what I had to do, sir. I wanted to protect what you've worked so hard for," she replied. As months turned into a full season, Maria's confidence and skill grew. She could manage the animals, tend the crops, and organize the workers with ease. She began teaching Emily small tasks as well, gathering eggs, watering plants, and learning the names of the animals. Maria wanted her daughter to grow up with the same understanding of responsibility, care, and patience that she had learned on the farm. One morning, Mr. Lewis approached Maria with a serious expression. "Maria," he said, "I want you to help me plan the next harvest. You've learned so much, and I trust your judgment. This farm isn't just my life anymore, and it's ours." Maria's eyes widened. She felt a mixture of pride and humility. "I'll do my best, sir," she said softly. "I won't let you down." Her days became filled with planning, planting, harvesting, and caring for the animals. But she also learned about the deeper side of farming: patience, foresight, and understanding the cycles of life. She watched seedlings grow into plants, eggs hatch into chicks, and small sprouts survive harsh weather. Each success, no matter how small, felt like a victory. Even as the farm thrived, Maria never forgot the struggles she had faced before arriving. She often thought about other people in the city who were struggling like she had been. But instead of feeling hopelessness, she felt gratitude. She had learned that kindness could change lives, that hard work was never wasted, and that even the smallest act of care could have a ripple effect. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned gold, Maria sat on the porch with Emily, watching the animals return to their stalls. Mr. Lewis joined them quietly, carrying a small basket of freshly picked vegetables. He handed it to Maria and said, "You've done more than keep this farm alive. You've brought it back to life." Maria felt tears well up in her eyes. "It's been hard work, sir, but I love it here," she said. "I feel like this is the place I was meant to be." Emily, sitting on her mother's lap, smiled brightly. "Mama, I like it here too. I love the animals in the garden." Maria hugged her tightly. She knew that they had found not just a home, but a future filled with hope, stability, and love. That night, as Maria lay in her bed, she reflected on her journey. Just months ago, she had been desperate, wandering from place to place, unsure if she and Emily would survive. Now she had work that mattered, a mentor who believed in her, and a daughter who could grow up happy and safe. Maria realized that life could change in the blink of an eye, with perseverance, honesty, and a little kindness from others. And as the moon rose over the farm, casting silver light across the fields, Maria drifted into a deep sleep, feeling content and hopeful for the first time in years. She had begun a new chapter, one of growth, love, and possibilities she had never dared to dream before. Maria woke early that morning as usual, greeted by the soft sounds of the farm, the lowing of cows, the clucking of hens, and the distant rustle of the orchard leaves. But today felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling that something important was about to happen. Emily, still sleepy-eyed, climbed out of bed and rubbed her small hands over her face. "Mama, what's today?" she asked in a quiet voice. Maria smiled, brushing Emily's hair back from her face. "I'm not sure yet, sweetheart. But we'll take it one step at a time, like every day," she said. Her heart was full. The farm had grown into more than just a place to work. It had become a home, a sanctuary, and a place of hope. After breakfast, Maria went out to check on the animals. Everything seemed calm and healthy. She fed the chickens, milked the cows, and tended to the goats, feeling a quiet satisfaction in the routine that had become so familiar. Mr. Lewis joined her shortly after, carrying a small envelope in his hand. "Maria," he said, his voice calm but serious, "I have something for you. Something important." Maria looked up, curiosity and surprise filling her eyes. She wiped her hands on her apron and took the envelope from him. It was heavy, containing papers that felt significant in her hands. She hesitated, her heart beating faster. "What is it, sir?" she asked softly. Mr. Lewis smiled gently. "Open it and see." Maria carefully unfolded the papers and gasped. They were property documents. The farmhouse, the barn, and a portion of the land had been legally transferred to her name. She blinked, unable to speak at first. Her hands shook as she held the papers and her mind raced. Could this be real? She had arrived at the farm months ago desperate, with nothing but a small bag and hope in her heart. And now she was being given not just a job but a future, a home, and security for Emily. Tears filled her eyes and she looked up at Mr. Lewis. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "I never expected—" This, he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Maria, you've worked hard, cared for this land, and treated it like your own. You've earned this not just with effort but with your heart. I wanted to give you something that would change your life for good." "You deserve it." Maria could hardly believe it. She fell to her knees, holding Emily close, who was staring at the papers with wide eyes. "Mama, is this ours?" Emily asked softly. Maria nodded, unable to speak through her tears. "Yes, darling. This is ours, a place where we can live, grow, and be safe." The next few days were filled with a mixture of joy and busy work. Maria and Emily began organizing the farmhouse, cleaning and decorating it with the little belongings they had. Every corner of the house held memories of their first months on the farm, the nights they had spent under the stars, the mornings filled with hard work, and the countless small victories that had brought them to this point. Maria realized that all those struggles had led her here, to a place of hope and stability. Word of Maria's hard work and dedication spread through the village. The other farmers came to admire how she had transformed the land and cared for the animals. They respected her not only for her skill but for her honesty and the kindness she showed to everyone. Maria, who had once been a stranger in their town, had become a part of the community, someone they could look up to and trust. Life on the farm settled into a new rhythm. Maria worked alongside Mr. Lewis to plan the next season's crops, ensuring everything was prepared for a bountiful harvest. Emily ran freely through the orchard, helping her mother gather vegetables and care for the animals. Every day was filled with purpose, and Maria cherished the sight of her daughter laughing without fear or hunger. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment and gratitude. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the fields, Maria stood with Mr. Lewis on the porch watching the animals return to their stalls. He turned to her and said, "You know, when you came here, I wasn't sure what to expect. But you've changed more than this farm. You've reminded me why I love this land, why I work so hard, and why it's worth trusting people again." Maria smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "I came here because I had nowhere else to go, sir. But now, I feel like this is where I belong. Not just me, but Emily too. You gave us a chance when no one else would, and we've worked hard to make it right." Mr. Lewis nodded, his eyes reflecting the golden light of the sunset. "Sometimes giving someone a chance is all it takes to change everything. You've done more than I could have imagined, Maria. This farm, this life, it's brighter because of you." That night, Maria sat with Emily in the newly cleaned farmhouse, holding her daughter close. She thought about the months that had led her here, the fear, the hunger, the endless rejections, and the determination to keep going. Every hardship had been worth it because it had led to this moment. A moment of security, love, and hope. As she tucked Emily into bed, Maria whispered softly, "We made it, darling. We're safe now, and we can build a beautiful life together." Emily smiled sleepily, her small hand clutching her mother's. I love our new home, Mama." The next morning, Maria walked through the farm with a sense of pride and contentment she had never known. She saw the healthy crops, the well-fed animals, and the small improvements she had made to the farmhouse. It was no longer just a job or a place to survive. It was a home, a life she had built with her own hands and heart. As she paused to look at the horizon, the sun rising over the fields, Maria felt a quiet promise within herself. She would continue to care for this land, nurture Emily, and work hard every day. She knew there would still be challenges, but she also knew that kindness, perseverance, and hope could carry them through anything. Months passed, and the harvest season arrived. The crops were the best the farm had seen in years. Villagers came to admire the fields, and Mr. Lewis smiled proudly as Maria guided Emily through the rows of vegetables, teaching her the value of care and hard work. The farm had transformed, not only in its land and animals, but in the hearts of those who lived there. Finally, one quiet evening, Maria stood at the edge of the orchard, watching Emily play among the trees, her laughter ringing in the warm air. She thought of the long journey that had brought them here, the hunger, the struggle, the uncertainty, and felt overwhelming gratitude. What had started as a desperate plea for any work had turned into a life of dignity, love, and security. Maria smiled to herself, tears in her eyes. "We've come so far," she whispered. "And this is only the beginning." The stars emerged one by one, shining above the fields and the farmhouse. Maria held Emily close and looked around the farm, seeing not just the land but the life they had created together. The woman who had once begged for a chance had found much more, a home, a future, and the knowledge that even the hardest days could lead to the most beautiful beginnings. And for Maria, that realization brought a peace she had never known, a promise that no matter what came next, they would face it together, strong, hopeful, and full of love.